Welcome to the Greener Way podcast, a show about people, planet, and purpose, and how investors and corporate leaders push forward in a complex world. James Thompson, thank you so much for joining us on the Greener Way today. Would you please introduce yourself and your role at FM Global?
Hey, Rachel. Thanks for having me on the podcast. Really appreciate it. I'm James Thompson. I'm the Senior Vice President and Division Manager across Asia Pacific for FM Global. I've been with the company for approaching 30 years. Now, the interesting place is where I started and where I've ended up. And, I started as an environmental engineer, and I found my way through a range of engineering and underwriting roles in our organisation to now leading the organisation across the region with our client base throughout Asia Pacific.
We like our environmental engineers here on the Greener Way. Throwback listeners to an early episode with Terence Jarrett-Narayam of EY and his views on climate risk and climate resilience. So you're at home here with us.
Amongst friends.
Absolutely. So can you tell us a little bit about your current role with FM Global and how particularly FM Global looks at working with your clients, your members actually, because you're a mutual, on this big question of climate risk and climate resilience?
As you know, Rachel, our client base is large commercial industrial corporations. And that ranges from, companies who are commercial entities. That we've got a range of universities, we've got manufacturers, we've got utilities, and all of them have fairly diverse challenges from a risk point of view. But all of them the conversations in the last number of years really have shifted dramatically towards discussions around climate and climate resilience. Now, we are an organisation that focuses on giving advice and technical recommendations on how corporations can really make themselves more resilient against the risks that face them. We do a lot of research in our headquarters in the US, and more recently, we've established a facility in Singapore, which we'll talk about later, to really build a strong knowledge base of what drives risk in these corporations, whether it be from cyclones, floods, bushfires, or any other climate perils that are facing our client base. So what we do is we learn from the losses that we pay every year. So as a large commercial insurance company, we pay in the order of $3 to $4 billion of loss every year with our clients being impacted. And we send engineers out to learn from those losses and to try and find ways to reduce the likelihood or the severity of those losses occurring again with our client base. And we bring that knowledge back to our clients through engineers walking through their facilities and identifying potential vulnerabilities that they might have to any of these perils to help them harden themselves and make them more resilient.
James, what's the role of the insurance? I mean, you've walked through a lot of this before in terms of the learning, in terms of the going out and, in working with clients individually or members individually. But sort of broadly speaking, what is the role of the insurance industry when it comes to de-risking climate change? Because it feels like, particularly in the wake of natural disasters, whether it's flooding in New South Wales or in Pakistan, typhoons and cyclones, the insurance industry is at the coalface of a lot of these, of absorbing the impacts. So how do you view it? How does FM Global view it?
So from an insurance industry point of view, I mean, fundamentally, the insurance industry puts a price on risk and helps manage that financial risk over a longer period of time. And so I think the first thing is really quantifying what that sort of financial risk is that our client base and the community is bearing. And what you see more recently is obviously with climate events, whether they be floods or cyclones becoming more severe and losses increasing year in, year out, the financial impact of that is being felt by the insurance industry and therefore being passed back to the community in terms of premium. Now, the role of the insurance industry, in my view, is also to give some guidance to clients as to what's driving that financial impact. And certainly the way we view it is to give advice on what clients can do to reduce their risk and therefore reduce that financial impact. And various insurers do it in different ways. And
Mhm.
certainly our approach is an engineering approach to trying to give that advice to our clients of
Mm,
how to harden themselves, make themselves more resilient, and
mm.
therefore that financial risk should be lower. And in the long term, that should therefore have a financial benefit to them if they reduce their climate risk.
James, what's the role of the insurance industry when it comes to de-risking climate change, as sort of that third leg between what happens at a national or regional level, what happens at the corporate individual level, and then you as that intermediary taking risk out of the system?
Yeah, look, Rachel, fundamentally, we put a price on risk.
Mm,
And in putting a price on risk, there are various drivers that we have
mm,
as an industry in terms of what's driving the pricing. And I think the
mhm,
role we have to play is helping our clients understand what those drivers are and giving them the tools to take action. Certainly, the way we view it, if we can provide knowledge to our client base of large corporates of things they can do to make themselves more resilient
mhm,
and drive risk out of their own businesses, that's going to drive the risk down that we end up taking on, and therefore the financial impact for all of us really is
mhm,
in all of that financial supply chain.
mm,
So really, we feel our role is to really use our knowledge of what drives financial loss
mhm,
and around climate change, and help our clients with specific things that they can do in their
mm,
facilities to harden themselves against these perils. And so, our engineers will walk into these facilities and provide tangible advice based on the specifics of those facilities on
mhm,
things that they can do. So an engineer will walk in and look at where the floodwaters will go, and we'll look at where the doorways are, and we'll look at the where the landing docks are for the trucks and openings,
mhm,
and where electrical equipment is entering and leaving the building, and provide
mm,
advice on how the floodwaters, for example, might be impacted and what you can do to reduce that impact.
mhm,
They'll go into a windstorm prone facility and they'll look at the structure of the roof, they'll look at the condition of the roof, how far apart the screws are holding on that roof, run calculations to figure out whether that roof is going to stay on in a cyclone. That's all the real tangible advice. And it might seem pretty straightforward, but you'd be surprised at how few companies are aware of those simple things that can really harden themselves against
mhm,
these perils. So going back to your question, I think the best thing the insurance industry can do is to bring knowledge to our client base to help them be better, be stronger, and therefore
mm.
reduce their risk and reduce the risk that gets passed on to the industry.
Let's get into some of those tools. I'm tremendously respectful of the FM Global Climate Resilience Index. It's a great forward-facing, public-facing resource. I've certainly covered it off a couple of times when it comes out annually. But how do you use sort of, knowledge pools like that, and other tools that you have to hand at FM Global to contribute to that education process?
So one of the things we've recently released is a product for our clients called the Climate Risk Report, and
Mm,
this really consolidates the visits that our engineers do to our clients' facilities. So we visit about
mm,
60,000 locations of our clients around the world, and
mm,
those engineering reports
mhm,
produce a vast array of data and analytics. And we package this for each individual client with this climate risk report. And what that report does is it provides, first of all, a series of opportunities or specific recommendations of things that clients can do to harden themselves
mhm,
against these climate perils.
mhm,
The second thing it does is it provides a scoring that sort of tells the client how they fit,
mhm,
versus their peers, versus the wider industry, and everyone loves to benchmark themselves. So we find
mm,
clients really value seeing where they fit in the universe.
mhm,
And what that allows with the quantification tools that sit within those climate risk reports
mm,
is to inform some of the reporting that some of these clients are doing. So a number of for factors that drive the TCFD reporting can be directly taken from this climate risk report we're
mhm.
to our client base. So clients have been crying out for this. They know we've got engineering information, they know we've got knowledge, and they've been crying out for this. And now we've been able to provide them this that can
Mm,
directly feed their TCFD reporting.
mm,
And we've put together a tool that allows them to translate from the climate risk report directly across into their TCFD reporting a
mm,
number of metrics, a number of
mm,
factors that helps inform all of that reporting for them.
mm.
So that's been really well received by our client base.
How do you gear this up for the future, James? Are you creating any metrics in terms of, X% of our clients face Y risks, and over the next 10 years, we would like to see a reduction of percentage? You know, have you set targets within FM Global of what you would like to see for your clients as they start using these tools going forward?
Well, we don't dictate for our clients where they need to go. That's really a decision
Mm,
for clients to take
mm,
based on the information we give them.
mm,
We work with them to prioritise opportunities for where they can harden themselves.
mm,
And so we don't necessarily set hard targets. We give some priorities and give some suggestions of which of the recommendations one might be more of a priority than the other.
mm,
We do let our clients, really, they're independent commercial organisations that need to form those own judgments.
mm,
And it's no surprises I talked about earlier that we use this to quantify the financial risk that we're taking on. And so, there's a tie between what they're paying in premium and some of this risk, and we're very clear with
mm,
them in terms of opportunities if they drive down their risk to improve their commercial terms.
mm,
So there is that tie that exists
mm,
in terms of how we map things forward for our client base going forward.
mm,
So in terms of metrics, we're constantly looking at our book of business to figure out, on the aggregate where we're impacted, what that means financially to us, and clearly through our setting of terms and conditions in our commercial arrangements with our clients, we encourage them certainly towards a direction of being less risky.
It would be an imprudent insurer indeed who encouraged clients to
Of
riskier
course.
behavior.
Well, and look, the other thing that we do that's a little unique is you talked about the fact we're a mutual insurance company.
Mm,
And the unique thing with that is that where we are financially more successful, our client base shares in the success of that.
mm,
So for many years, we've provided in years where we're financially successful, we provide money back to our client base in the form of something called a membership credit.
mm,
Now, this year we've actually done something a little different, and we've because of the financial strength of the company, we're returning a what we are calling a resilience credits to our client base, and that's a
mm,
5% credit on their premiums, and that is aimed for them to take that money and invest back into programs, recommendations that we might be giving them, again, to harden themselves. And so it's
mm.
really, we're putting our money where our mouth is to provide money back to our client base. What that adds to is about $300 million US of money that we're giving back to our client base to harden themselves.
Which is a non-zero pool of money, I would imagine, for some of your clients, in terms of, ancillary investment, ancillary support. So it's
We
it's
we
it's a
insure
fantastic idea.
well, we insure very big clients, and as you'd
Mm,
imagine, their premiums are very big. So that 5%
mm,
number, it tends to be a fairly big sum of money that they can invest.
yeah,
And so,
mm,
and that's been well received, and
mm,
clients are genuinely taking that money and directing it into hardening themselves
mm.
against some of these perils.
Now, we've talked quite broadly about some of these climate risks and sort of the broad base of the client membership, at FM Global, but are there the concerns that are specific to APAC, James, that you're finding that, sets the region apart? Obviously, there's certain impacts that happen in APAC that don't happen in other regions of the world, but what are those concerns, and how are you addressing them specifically from the APAC perspective?
Well, I think there is a degree of consistency. I mean, everywhere around the world, we're
Mm,
seeing a greater frequency of hurricanes, cyclones, typhoons, call
mm,
them what you will, depending on where you are in the world. And certainly, wind is a concern across Asia Pacific. But I think the number one thing that we're focused on across the region is flooding. We've seen the severe events here in Australia. We've seen Pakistan, as you talked about, but year in, year out, flood is increasingly a focus for us.
Mm,
Now, what we're doing is we're trying to work with our engineers and our client base to bring more products into the Australian and Asian marketplace that can
mm,
help clients prepare better
mm,
for these sorts of flooding events. I think we've all seen the vision of people heroically trying to fill sandbags and sandbag communities, which is a tremendous effort, but it's really hard work and really it's not as effective as it could be. There
mm,
is technology that is a lot simpler, it's a lot more effective, quicker to erect, that we're trying to bring in. And so our approvals group, we have a division called FM Approvals, who are working with a range of manufacturers to bring various barriers that can be erected very, very quickly to our client base. There are these barriers that imagine a long plastic tube about a metre high that you actually fill with water, of all things. That can become a flood barrier, and it can be done very, very quickly.
mhm,
And it's incredibly effective in
mm,
keeping water out. So in this region, what we're trying to do is bring some of these really smart, really effective technologies and practical
mm,
solutions into Australia, into parts of Asia, to help people be prepared for things like flood. The,
mm.
the other thing that we're doing, our chief engineer is working with the code body that's responsible for the bushfire standard in Australia and trying to further evolve the bushfire standards here in Australia. It's an area that
I
we
think we talked about this earlier, didn't we? There's some very interesting discrepancies in the rules around things like how embers travel and how all that's measured. Is that what you were talking? Is that sort of part of it,
Yeah, that's
or
right, Rachel. Look,
yeah?
we've been well. We just this year celebrated 50 years of being in Australia, and I would say for 30 of those 50 years, we've been incredibly active on the code bodies. So the
Mm,
Australian Fire Sprinkler Standard is largely an FM global. There's a lot of FM global knowledge within that sprinkler standard. And in the
mm,
last 10 years, we've been working with the bushfire
mm,
standard to evolve that to really understand the impact of ember attack, the
mm,
distance that you need to be away from the fire front,
mm,
and also some smart things to do in terms of openings in buildings and how to engineer buildings. So we think
mhm,
there's more to do there. There's more to do in terms of smart engineering and smart science
mhm,
to keep the community hardened against
mm.
bushfire attack.
And then, so James, just to sum things up as we're coming to the end of our time together, if you're looking out, say, 10 years into the future, what do you hope for clients of FM Global and for you as a mutual insurer, if you're thinking about this issue writ large of resilience and how climate change plays into it? What would satisfy you on a professional level if you're casting ahead to 2032?
I'm always reluctant to look too far into the future. Just
There's a good insurer right there,
because,
folks.
well, the reason I say that, Rachel, is that change is constant, and our client
Mm,
base is constantly evolving,
mm,
and so I would expect that there will be a whole new range of challenges from a risk perspective that will be facing our client base in 10 years' time. Our client base in 10 years' time is going to look very different. One of the things we're spending a lot of time with them at the moment, they're decarbonising all of our clients, which means that there's a lot of electrification of their businesses. Now, that electrification in itself brings risk. It brings all sorts of different risks that we're trying to develop new science for, whether it be battery technology. We've all seen the fires involving batteries. And so, what that looks like in 10 years' time is going to be very different. We'll see a hydrogen economy, and how we need to engineer the risks associated with the hydrogen economy are going to be very different. who knows, are we going to have small-scale nuclear by that stage? And, there's going to be a whole range of risks associated with that. So, it's constantly evolving, and therefore, as an engineer, I love the challenge that brings in terms of helping our client base. So, I'm just hoping that we're able to stay ahead and keep informing our clients with new science and new ways of hardening themselves against the risks that evolution of their businesses bring to them.
Fantastic. Well, James Thompson of FM Global, thank you so much for joining us on The Greener Way. Have a great day.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thanks for listening to the Greener Way podcast. If you liked today's show, remember to rate and review us on your podcast platform and make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss an episode. Any feedback? Contact us on podcast@fssustainability.com.au. I'm Rachel Allen Backus.
The Greener Way podcast is a product of FS Sustainability, a show about people, the planet, and investing in our collective future. All information in this podcast is for education and entertainment purposes only. The Greener Way podcast gives listeners access to information and educational content provided by discussing numerous financial sustainable options and our featured guests. It is not intended as a substitute for professional, legal, or tax advice. The hosts of The Greener Way are not financial professionals and are not aware of your personal financial circumstances. FS Sustainability operates under an Australian Financial Service License and the exemption made available under the Corporations Act 2001 in respect to any information or advice given. Before making any financial decisions, you should read the product disclosure statement and, if necessary, consult a licensed financial professional. For more information, head to the disclaimer page on the FS Sustainability website, fssustainability.com.au.